So here we have a photograph of a pair of scissors on a piece of paper. We're going to work to scale. Now, working to scale makes it easier. We are going to transpose the shape of this here first of all, and then deal with other elements to do with it. So it's a light underdrawing. I don't want to press hard because I'm going to make mistakes. Now, because I'm working to scale, on this axis, I can just draw some guidelines, some very, very light guidelines. You probably won't even be able to see these in your version on this screen because it'd be very, very light. So they're very, very, very light guidelines. I think that point is slightly lower than that point. Just going to put a little mark there. So you see, I've got very, very light. I'm going to have to press a bit harder, I think, so you can see them. But I've got some very light guidelines. Now, you know me, I'm a measurer. If we're going to do something, we're going to make it technically accurate quick, and we're going to move past that, and then we can make it more fluid and loosen it later. If you have the ability to measure, you're going to speed yourself up, and that's why I like it. Some people don't measure at all. Some people just do it all by eye. But if you're going for accuracy, taking measurements is a quick way to do it. Now, if you don't have a strip of paper where you can take a measurement between 2 points, and on that x-axis I've just measured 1 point there and 1 point there, and I'm just going to, because I've got my 2 height measurements, I'm going to draw. I'm going to press reasonably hard because you won't be able to see otherwise. So I've made 2 points, which correspond to there and there. Now, if I only have a pencil in my hand, I can still take measurements because I can take them with the tip of the pencil. See what I've got? I've got the point here, the point there, the point here, the point there. I'm using the pencil. If the image is very big, it's slightly harder because you might be using multiple pencils, but you can still take measurements. So I don't believe anyone cannot take measurements when they're drawing. So I'm looking for this point here now, that intersection. I'm going to put a little mark on there. I'm not being really finicky with this. Like, I'm not getting a ruler out. You know me, I've taught you before. I don't use a ruler because it isn't about 3.4 centimetres and all of that. It's about just getting the vibe of it, getting it down on paper. Now, from there to there, what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at that angle. I've put my pencil on it so you can see that angle. If I put my pencil over here now and the angles are not parallel, it's not right, is it? It's not right. I could put a vertical plumb line in and I could take a measurement. I'm doing it with the pencil so you can see how I construct. And I could draw my line down here. So at that point, I have a rough line that connects there to there. I know it, notice, very lightly constructed. So at this stage, what I'm going to go and do is go around the whole image and make a few points like this. So I'm working out these intersections. It's important that you do this all very, very lightly because you will make errors. I make errors all the time doing this type of thing. Now, the only reason why I stuck it down on the table, because I reorientate my work all the time, is because I'm making this video and I don't want to knock it out of shot. Guys, that was tedious. It was hard work and I had to concentrate. This is what art's about. It's not all about having the fun and the freedom to develop cool ideas. It is a bit about this as well. It's about the grammar of language. It is tough. So sometimes you just have to sit through and do this stuff. If you do it, you can use more of the hacks later on. But for the moment, learning this stuff is going to be useful to you. Notice I've got my pencil sharpener. I'm always keeping my pencil sharp. I've got my rubber. You know what? You are allowed to rub things out and correct as you go. And here we have the drawing. It is not perfect. And remember, the artists I've shown you, if you've watched the other videos, about describing something that appears to be accurate and appears to do what it needs to do, but it's not exactly the same. We are not creating a photographic replica, but we're creating a really clearly similar description. Now, things you can do to check. You can. I've got my pencil over this section and I'm drawing with my tip of my pencil a shape over that negative space. And then over my own drawing, I'm drawing over again. And I don't feel the two things are quite the same. it's better to do it with your finger because you really feel the action. If you do it on your drawing, you could smudge your drawing, so don't press too hard. And I can feel what's happening. It needs to be a little bit more refined there, it needs to come down a touch. And across here, that shape comes down and round. Now you're going, Murphy, you're being obsessive. Well, I am, but we don't want to be too obsessive about these things. We want to just get it down. You might find this harder than other people. It might be you find it easy. You might like the technical aspect of this challenge. But we're all different, remember. We all use language in different ways. Think about the objects and how it's constructed. If you've watched the other video where I talk about Leonardo da Vinci's real discovery, if you think about a pair of scissors, it's mainly two components and a hinge here. So we have the piece at the back, this section that I've drawn some lines into, that's that panel, and it has to connect here. That blade must be in line with the handle. So as I put my pencil behind it, you can see that connection I'm making. Check your work for things like that. Look at the negative space, look at those shapes in there. I said it's an isosceles triangle. You might argue with me it's not quite, it's a bit scaling because of that top profile, but you know what I'm talking about. If it is an equilateral triangle, something has gone wrong. So use all those checks. That now is ready for the next stage where we consider tone and volume. Right guys, we've done the tedious bit, the hard bit is over. Think writing an essay when you have to do all that planning, that research, constructing the framework. Now it's about adding the flourishes and the fun bit, the interpretation. So we need to consider different factors about drawing: the description of the object's surface and its volume. And in volume, we can do it in a couple of different ways. This theory can be applied to everything we draw, so bear it in mind and think beyond the object. I've drawn 3 circles. I want to convey volume. I can do this first of all by applying tone. I apply dark tone in a band. I then work a medium tone in and I blend those bands together. The way I've done it, it looks like it has volume. It looks spherical. There's a light point hitting the top and a shadow at the other side. That appears to be 3-dimensional. But the line I've just drawn with my finger can be applied to a flat drawing. So here I've drawn flat lines, here I've drawn curved lines. The flat line suggests a 2-dimensional plane, no volume. It's saying it's flat, it's creating an illusion. Yet the arced line is suggesting volume. It's suggesting it's rounded, suggesting it's 3-dimensional, like lines of latitude and longitude on the globe. If we think about volume first and we think about tone, we're going to look at this object. I've pointed to the darkest area that I can see on this object on the handle. The darkest tone I can achieve with this particular pencil, which is a B, on this piece of paper is that. That will work. The lightest area is probably somewhere up here. There's other light points. So the lightest area I can achieve and the lightest tone I can achieve is the white of the paper. You don't feel that you have to add some kind of tone into an area where there is no tone because leaving the white of the paper is a cheat. It is not. It's using the range of things we have before us. Now if I look for mid-tones, here's a very light tone here. I'm pressing reasonably lightly. I'm looking for a deeper mid-tone, something like this. I'm looking for a darker tone, something like that. So this is tonal range, and you can see the full extent of it in doing this simple analysis task. But there's more going on, isn't there? It's hard to see volume because these objects are quite flat. And I say flat, there's a little bit of depth to this object, but it is not like a cube with lots of different planes. It has different planes, but it's not obvious. Here, on this section, the handle is receding away. As I put my thumb into that point in the scissors, that is receding away. It's ergonomically designed so I am comfortable when I use those scissors. So there is to some degree some of that stuff going on with volume, but not a great deal. So I can't use a lot of this device. This is where I need to use my other key area. I'm going to just bring in 2 objects, both balls. One is a poke ball, one is a small tennis ball. Let's look at them. This is made of plastic. It's hard, it's smooth, it's shiny. This is similar to a normal tennis ball. It's slightly smaller, but it's soft and it's fuzzy and it's slightly squishy. We've handled these sorts of materials before, so we know and we bring past knowledge to our work. How are we going to describe those different surfaces? Well, let's look at what Henry Moore did. If you've seen the earlier video, remember Henry Moore describes the wool of a sheep with a kind of scribbly mark. That tells us something of that surface. If I was going to describe either of these with the scribbly mark, it's clearly going to be the fuzzy edge of this tennis ball and not the hard plastic of the poker ball. These things matter, as does Bart Simpson. Now, Bart often appears in my work to illustrate to you a very clear point. Bart Simpson walks around Earth with a black outline in his animation. Many types of drawings have outline. Line drawings have outline, but in this particular case, Bart has a very clear line which defines the yellow of his head, the white of his eye, and so on. Let's look back to our scissors and our objects. Does this have a black solid outline around it? Nope, it has an edge. Does this? Nope, it has an edge. Does this? No, it has an edge. We don't have its three-dimensional form. We're reliant on the photograph, so we can't handle it in the same way we can these and really think about it. But we can see what's going on. Now, you might be clever and say, aha, but there is a very clear line at this side. Let's think why. The blade of the scissor is not a flat thing. It's not a piece of paper. It's got some depth. So I think that that edge there is showing a little bit of the recession of the edge as it moves away, that plane as it cuts away. It's quite thin, but that's what I believe is going on there. So at this side, yes, you can draw a line. At this side, here and here, I can see a line there and it's fading out into this section. So if I was drawing that line, I would press harder and then I would get lighter as the line's moving along. But there is not a clear heavy line which defines the full edge all the way round. So we need to consider all of those factors when we're developing our drawing. This mark making, the surface of our sheep in here, let's consider that before we get started too. What marks and textures can I see on the blade of these scissors? It's probably worth a zooming in and looking a little bit closer. Look here, what is going on? Directional lines. Yep, I can see some. So those lines are kind of going across. Here we go. They're little lines like this. There might be different weighted lines, but they're doing that. Let's look up here. What's going on up here? I can see some of those lateral type lines. I can also see some like little highlighty bits where there's some kind of like, I don't know, maybe it's grease on the blade, some dirt, some reflection, but I can see some sort of more scribbly marks. Doesn't really suggest steel if I was trying to draw steel in a different context, but I'm beginning to think about the marks there and how I would interpret them. Remember Henry Moore. Look at those marks. They're little scribbles, but they're suggesting something of the wool on that sheep's back. These factors are all the things we are about to consider as we start the next stage of our drawing. I begin by sharpening my pencil. I can't do this without a sharp pencil. I'm going to start, as I always do, with dark tone. I'm looking for solid areas. I'm going to block in and I'm going to get rid of a load of this drawing straight away. It is dark in here. I'm going in dark. What types of marks am I applying? Because it's a solid fill section, I'm pretty much going fairly even. Where it looks slightly lighter on the edge, I'm going to leave it, and then I'm just going to work dark tone into this area. I'm going to come back to you in a minute when I've filled in a load of dark areas. So I spent a moment just doing some shading and I'm putting in some fairly solid tone. There is a degree of variation because I'm realising some of these areas are lighter, but I'm putting it in. I reorientate my work to my convenience. I'm not having to work across, left-handed, right-handed, it doesn't matter. Just reorientate your work. If you're working from a source picture, it doesn't have to be the right way up. So as I'm drawing, I'm thinking all the time about these planes, these surfaces and what's in front of me. I'm pressing harder where I want it darker, as you well know, and then lighter. If I'm not sure, I might go in a bit lighter and then come back to it. Now this edge, it's very dark to the edge of that cutaway, so I'm going to work with a very clean line. It's a very, very hard edge onto there, so I'm working with a very clean line. Now it's coming up, it's going slightly lighter, so I'm coming slightly lighter as I'm drawing into there. So as it comes up here, what's happening between those sections, it blends together. So I'm just working these sections in. I'm looking, it's lighter into this section here. So as that piece comes around there, there's a little highlight on that rim. So when I'm creating a little highlight, to be honest, I'm not too stressed about that being in exactly the right position. I'm pressing quite hard. Now I can see highlight on the edge here, because then it's moving away down the back side again there. So I'm going to just leave that a little bit lighter. Maybe I've gone a bit too dark when I've just done that. I can see some reflection in it. So along this side it's sort of slightly lighter, but I need a hard enough edge on there to describe the metal. My pencil point, I've lost it. I'm going in. So there is a slight bump on there, but I've overemphasised it on here. So if I am going to draw a line in a mid-tone range there, what I'm now going to do is I'm now going to just blend that in. So lightly working that into the drawing. So it's still got hard edge, but it's not like Bart, it's not got a heavy outline. And I'm going to keep working around here and work out what's going to go on in this tonal section as I'm coming across here. So I'm constantly observing. When I'm drawing like this, I'm concentrating. I'm not really chatting. I don't really often listen to music as well. I find it distracting. Some people can, but if you can, then maybe it helps you. It's okay too. The pencil I'm using is a B, so it is a little bit hard. It's not as hard as an HB, but it's a little bit hard. If you're working with a softer pencil, you might find that this goes down quicker. I tend not to work with very, very soft pencils because it's hard to get those very, very clean edges if you do. So it's a matter of working between pencils sometimes in a drawing where you might start with one and move between several. But in here I'm just sticking with one. Let it be known, at no point did I get my greasy fingertip and start smudging to create a light tone. I did it all through the tip of the pencil and the pressure I was applying. I'm saying it in a stern voice because, as you know, I don't want your greasy finger on your work. Now I'm just going to take the rubber because some of the underdrawing is coming through, and in this case it's just contradicting what I'm trying to do with that edge. So I'm now going to go back into it. Help actually if I put my glasses on to do this, but it'll do. So again, I'm just working that edge so it's nice and clean, because the underdrawing was a little bit loose into this area, so it was just interfering with what I was trying to do. So I'm working up to that edge into there, slightly darker along that rim, blending. So you see what's happening, I'm describing it. Remember, ultimately we're never going to show this and this side by side. So as long as you get into a point where it's looking fairly convincing, we'll go with it. Now I'm just going to do a bit more on the edge there. My shape isn't quite right, but I think I can just about get away with that. So whilst I've drawn in the line, I'm now going to do that thing of bringing it into the drawing, working back from the line into the drawing, and even if it's quite light, it can get blended in. And I can do this in stages. I don't have to commit to it in the first instance. I can do it lightly, have a look at it, do a little bit more. Now what we're beginning to see is that the drawing and the source picture are not exactly the same, and if all of us are sat side by side and we're all trying to do this quite well, there is a bit of variety in this, and this is what makes drawing brilliant. It's what makes the handwriting of different artists come through in the work, and we want that. So whilst we're trying to get you to a certain level, we don't want to lose that thing that is authentically you. So as you're working, really think about the kind of marks you like making. I'm going to suggest we have an action type, a kind of mark that we like, shapes that we like. If I asked you what's your favourite colour, you know completely what your favourite colour is. You don't normally and ah, it's blue, or it's red, it's this, it's that. But if I asked you what your type of mark making is, your favourite mark making, you might not instantly know, but as you start drawing, you might become more and more aware of this sort of stuff. Now I'm now looking at these textures and marks I can see onto this bit of the blade. There's some little marks and things I didn't draw in the handle at all. So I'm trying to handle it in a different way. It's a mid-tone, so I'm going at it with a mid-tone. See, I'm just working across. My mark making is angular. I draw with a very angular line. I like quite plotted marks into my work. There's influence of that from other artists that I've looked at when I was younger, but those are things that I particularly like. I enjoy drawing those things. So you see quite a bit of that in my work. So as I'm drawing into here, I'm now jumping across to another area up there. There's a light edge onto there, so I'm going to leave it. It's a mid-tone, it's fairly smooth, so I'm working with the mid-tone into there. I'm working around that nut, I'm working in the shadow around it. I'm modifying my drawing even now. I'm making little changes to where things are, because as I'm putting tonal shapes in, I'm beginning to think that doesn't look quite right, so I'm still making adjustments. So even with my accurate sort of plotting that I did at the beginning, just filling that area with tone. It's smoother than that, but remember I like angular marks, so I often have this kind of fairly hatched line, which says something about my drawing. So I'm building this up. It might be that as I'm building it up, I think, I'm going to leave that. That works. That does what it needs to do. It's tonally at the moment, it's a bit light, but I might leave those things for now and then come back to them later and build up again later. So into this, I'm going to go into the nut now. Now I think I've covered most of the theory, so it's a matter of now just sitting and working into it. I'm looking forward to doing that line up the edge, because I like that. Remember, I know what I like. I like drawing a weighted line where it's heavy to light. These subtle textures up here are going to be quite tricky, so I'm doing the hard bits first. So remember, I'm working from dark to light. That's my way of working. If I lose my light and I want to get a bit back, I can dab it or rub it with the rubber. So that new light area I've just put onto the handle there actually works quite well. It's much lighter than this one now, but I might just leave it a little bit lighter. So think as you're drawing. I'll jump back to you when I've finished this in a few minutes and have a reflection on the piece of work itself. And finally, I think I've drawn enough to convey the object. It's got a kind of realism about it. I've not in anywhere used heavy outlines consistently like Bart Simpson. Remember, this is real life. If it's got a soft edge, we want to describe that surface. Look at the mark making that I've put onto the blade. It corresponds to the things I see over here. Tonally, there may be some variation because in places I've actually increased the light tone and I think it worked well, so I've left it. We are trying to convey reality. We are not ever going to put our source picture and our drawn image side by side because the eye jumps and looks and spots the differences. But if we just see the scissors alone, we have achieved what we hoped for, something that's realistic and controlled. Now, I'm experienced, I've done it a lot. You will be too when you practice. The only way to get to this place is to practice. You take this knowledge into all your working out, your fun drawing, your imaginary drawing, so it has enormous value to you longer term, even though rendering reality is probably the least functional place drawing exists. Good luck.